If you've been following the channel recently, you will know that we started on the 1/350 scale HMS King George V, and you may recall that I wasn't overly impressed with the Pontos resin parts. Now that we're at the stage of that build where I need to fit the decks, I decided towards some replacement parts for the resin parts from Edwards. Unfortunately, they're coming from Czechoslovakia, so it will take some time to get here. So in the meantime, we're starting an out-of-the-box build, which is the 1400 RMS Titanic. I've previously done two 1700 Titanics, but given both away, with the last one actually going to the family of a Titanic crew member who saved numerous lives on that night of the 15th of April 1912. So let's take a look, first starting with the box, which features some quite impressive artwork. And as you can see by the fact it barely fits on the bench, the overall length of the model is 67 centimetres. Putting that aside, we can take a look at the extras that come in the box. Being an anniversary edition, it comes with some rather nice extras that will go on the shelf with the model when it's completed. And first of all, we have the usual Revell instructions. And then we have a replica of a menu from the Titanic's first class dining room. It was nothing but the best for the first class. The second and third class, however, were pretty much on their own for the entire trip. And next we have some rather nice postcards. And the first one shows the Titanic dwarfing one of the White Star's earlier ships. And the next one is a visual representation showing the size of the ship compared to some of the skyscrapers in New York, and it's rather ironic, it shows the ship in a downward sinking position. And finally, a nice portrait of the ship at sea. Moving on, we have the decals, which include a gold coloured pinstripe, but I'm going to be painting this on the hull instead. Alongside that is various decals that will go on the hull once it's painted. And finally is a detailed brochure of the Titanic showing many of the first class areas, but again we don't see the lower classes, as this was a time when class was important and the lower class was often kept out of sight. And that's it for the included extras, so let's move on to the paint. And the Titanic had a fairly unique colour scheme, only matched by its sister ships, the Olympic and the Britannic. And so we're going to be using the Vallejo Titanic paint set, including the unique anti-fouling paint that was used on the Titanic, and as well as a faded yellow for the smokestacks. Moving across to the other bench, I've laid out the sprues. Sprue A and B are the two sides of the ship's hull, with the remainder made up of sprues C to J. And the hull is moulded out of black plastic and the rest is white. It will be primed and painted though, so this doesn't really matter. But if you weren't going to be doing a lot of the painting, you could use this to your advantage. You can also see that the decks are made of long pieces that lay on top of each other, separated by walls that run the entire length of each deck. As this is a bit of an old tooling, you can see there is quite a lot of flash that will be needed to be removed. And parts will need to be tidied up a lot before fitting. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the instructions, and the first step is to put together the stand. For that we need sprue C. And it's a simple 4-piece construction, so we just need to clean up the pieces once they're off the sprue. and then it's just a dry fit before gluing together. Then it can be put to one side to dry, and we can begin the hull construction. Starting with the beam supports that go inside the main hull. These were pretty flashed, but even though they can't be seen in the finished model, it's still worth taking the time to clean them up. The pins were the worst part, but they also had a seam going all the way round. At this point, all the parts for the hull can be dry fitted. After trying for ages to dry fit the hull, it was just too badly fitting, and took almost an hour of fettling to get it together and taped, so I did this off camera. And even after all that work, it still wasn't fitting very well, and so gluing it together had to be done off camera too, as it was too awkward to film the process. So now we have the base done, and also the two halves of the hull together, which took ages to get right, but we'll need a coat of primer to show it any more imperfections. It took a while to align the two halves, and when I finally did, I had to join them using Tamiya extra thin, and then reinforce the seam on the inside with Tamiya white cap. I had to pay attention to parts of the hull that were important to get aligned perfectly. This was mainly around the screws and the rudder. I went ahead and desprued the screws and gave them the first coat of bronze colour. And the next stage was to fit the rest of the parts of the hull, and for some reason Tamiya Extra Thin wasn't creating a good bond between the two different plastics, so I had to reinforce it with CA glue. Then it was a case of taping it into place and allowing the glue to dry, and then repeating the process for the other side. The two screw wings on the rear were next to be fitted, and again they required some super glue to strengthen the fit. As soon as the rear screw wings were in place, the tape could be removed from the other parts. And then the screw wings were dry as well, so the tape could be removed from them. And with the CA glue reinforcement, all those parts are firmly in place, and the rudder can now go on as well, using the same process. First using Tamiya thin and then reinforcing with CA glue. Care needs to be taken to align the very small pins and the two sides of the hinges along the rudder. And it helps to clamp these two pieces together prior to gluing with Tamiya Extra Thin. And with the rudder in place, it can be put to one side, and while it's drying, I went ahead and gave the outside of the screws another coat of rose colour. And I use these chrome markers that come in different metal colours for this. And they have very big nibs that you have to push in to prime. I created a little puddle on masking tape and used a small brush for delicate parts. And once you're happy with this side, simply turn them over and repeat until you have your desired finish. And that's the hull completely assembled, ready for painting, which we will do in the next episode. But for now, that's where we're going to leave it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Take care.